To start, shot in the arm tackles vaccine hesitancy and misinformation through the merger of storytelling and science. How did this partnership initially come about?
I got lucky enough to find Neil on my previous film, Food Evolution, which was a reset of the conversation around GMOs. There's a lot of overlap between anti-GMO disinformation and anti-vaccine disinformation. And he did a brilliant job narrating that under my brilliant direction, of course. Joke, everybody. He did a brilliant job narrating that, and partnering on getting that film out into the world. And then when I was working on this, which really I called Food Evolution Boot Camp for Shot in the Arm, there was so much overlap, but this was much harder and much more complicated and much more contentious. I sent a rough cut to Neil to get his input on and ask him if he would consider coming back on board. And he said, "No, this movie's terrible." He didn't say that.
Into that. Yeah.
So yeah, he gave excellent notes to help me tighten it up and get the science right and places that we might need a graph and things like that. And then I begged him to also come on board as executive producer to further this mission, which included him doing wonderful press like this. So yeah, why'd you come on board, Neil?
Yeah, I regret it every day. Like, what did I agree to? No, so when artists call, the creative types call, and they need some of what I have expertise in, I'm kind of there for you when that happens. And in this case, Scott wanted some guidance on not his storytelling, because he's very excellent at that. It's how to make sure the science is carried in that storytelling without compromising its integrity, where you're putting in the supportive information you would need to make this point relative to that point.
Yeah.
Did you represent your adversary accurately, or might you have had some bias there? So I got him saying this, so there it is. No, but he said something else a little later. I know this from press accounts. So there's that. That's where I came into this equation. But it's Scott's brainchild, right? That this should even be a project in the first place.
It's so gripping to watch. There seems to be this reluctancy in media and from the public to acknowledge the nuances of science and that it's ever evolving. Why do you think this is the perfect medium to present these information and then start these conversations?
Great question. Yeah, it's the power of storytelling. I'm so honored that I've been able to make a career out of it. It's been our greatest tool as humans to be able to convince each other of how to go down the road. Obviously, it can be manipulated like propaganda, but in its best form, when it's used for good, when the superpowers are used for good, it moves people and engages with people and earns people's trust and surprises them and makes them laugh, and it makes them cry and makes them think in a way that a meme or a GIF or even a short news piece can't do the same thing. One of the greatest compliments we had for the film is from a wonderful communicator and scientist, Kathleen Hall Jameson, who said that this film does more for fighting disinformation than we've tried to do in 20 years of papers. And she respects those papers. She knows what those papers are for, but it was really humble.
I mean, research papers on
research papers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was just such obviously a great honor. And that these are complementary. Let's have both. Let's have the research papers, and let's have science, and let's have Alan Alda support scientists trying to get them to become better communicators, and all of the above. So we've seen the film has been an amazing tool to help people remember the importance of science and fighting disinformation, but also supporting things like humility and supporting our social contract and defending democracy as well. And it's been a great honor to see it have that effect.
By the way, a point about defending democracy, it's not so much that we're defending democracy. We are declaring implicitly and a little bit explicitly, and Paul Offit, I think, says it bluntly, when there is no understanding of truth, you cannot have an informed democracy. Democracy just simply doesn't work.
right.
because we're all collectively voting on some outcome. And if nobody has an understanding of what is objectively true, then your votes just dissipate into nothingness because you're not connected to objective reality.
And the same thing, if you don't have a grounding in just common decency
Mm.
and love of humanity and love beyond the end of your nose, you also are not going to have a functioning democracy.
You touched upon this already, but you were there to guide script points and make sure that the information was conveyed in the most compelling way. What was that collaboration process like, working with Scott and the medical experts and accomplishing just that?
Yeah, I would say he agrees with maybe 2/3 of what I tell him. Half of what remains, we fight about it. Then I twist his arm and he succumbs. And
He's larger than me.
and
There's
there's a remaining little bit where I say, okay, he's the filmmaker, he's the director, he has a vision, and I'm just coming in my little pieces here. So I don't have the life experience to judge, to second guess what his decisions are in that sort of piece of it. But the rest of it, I know my place in this. I'm not telling him about camera moves. I'm not telling him about lighting. No, I know where I belong. And I belong commenting on how the science is moving through the film. And do you need a graph to help out this comment? Do we need more from this person? Because it's this dangling content there. Is there, so there are a few places where Scott added content back to that might have been on a cutting room floor otherwise, that would flesh out a bit of science that I felt needed that. Otherwise, the viewer just simply has to take a person's word for it. And I didn't want it to be just that.
Yeah. You both definitely accomplished that. And Scott, documentary filmmaking is such an underappreciated art form. And while this is classified as a documentary, it very much feels like a political thriller and is approached with so much empathy. Was that something that you were mindful of as you were creating this project? How were you able to toe that line so
I
effortlessly
was
as a
trying to
filmmaker?
figure out why it didn't feel like a documentary. And you just said it. Thank you. It doesn't feel, documentaries feel like an obligation, right?
Yeah.
And this, it's not an obligation. It's we're being emotionally carried by it.
Yeah.
And maybe there's no word for that. But what did you call it? A political thriller?
Well, thank you both. It was through hard work and determination. Early on, there was a time that we were actually looking at detective films, right, or even a murder mystery, right? That this is a reverse murder mystery of like who is the murder, the virus is the murder, but also the disinformation artists are the murderers. But no, we worked very, very hard. Films even like Traffic, a layered film like Traffic was an inspiration. Brilliant Steven Soderbergh film. So we do our best within the documentary genre to try and make it feel like any other movie. It's all storytelling. We're just using a variety of vocabulary that narrative filmmakers now use too, if it's an interview or handheld camera work or whatever it is. But yeah, you work really, really hard to try and keep people engaged and still tell the truth and not cheat on them.
And there's so much information and education that audiences are going to be able to take away after seeing this documentary. Did anything surprise either of you during this process?
Yeah, the biggest surprises were probably just how ruthless some people can be. I'll give you a negative surprise and a positive surprise. Negative surprise was how ruthless people can be. So Del Bigtree, one of the biggest anti-vax communicators, in 2019, I'm interviewing him and he's trying to say that, measles are really not dangerous, or they say measles is dangerous, but drinking water can be dangerous, just like a terrible comparison. And he finishes by saying, if Ebola is sweeping the country, talk to me then, right? Like if a real risk, like this isn't the real risk. If the real risk comes and we cut to COVID, he doesn't change his mind. He just makes it worse. And he doubles down, he triples down. And it's just awful, all the way to him being at a rally at the same time on January 6th and just spewing cynicism, saying, I wish I could tell you that COVID was real. I wish I could tell you that Tony Fauci should be trusted. I wish I could tell you that voting machines work. Just throws that in there. And I wish I could tell you that people cared, which is like such a great closing line. It's just like the ultimate cynicism, but just listen to me. And so that breaks my heart that people can be that ruthless. I wish that his body would seize like an engine, right? That's been abused and just stop working, that he just can't spew anymore. Bull crap, but that's extreme. But then on the positive side of surprise, the positive side of the surprise is that in a heartbreaking situation like Samoa, where two parents lost their babies, two babies were died from a mistake around the MMR vaccine. Just a muscle relaxant was mixed in there. Yeah. The babies died. Nothing to do with the validity of the MMR vaccine. And I'll jump to the end of it, and horrible influence of people like Robert Kennedy Jr. on making that situation work. But you go to the end of it, and now there's a measles outbreak in Samoa because they've stopped taking vaccines. And these parents that lost their babies to this mistake, who could become so cynical and so want revenge on the medical institution, go on the news. It gets me freaking choked up. Go on the news and say, please don't make our tragedy your tragedy. Make it worse.
Yeah.
Please go get vaccinated. That is a beautiful surprise of what we can be as human beings. We can be that humble. We can be that generous. We can be that dedicated to trying following the best information, not just what our passions want us to follow.
I would say surprise in a good way was, and this is in part credit to Scott for picking the right people, but I want to believe, and I think it's true, that the temperament of the people Scott selected for this documentary is not uncommon among healthcare professionals. And that, how is it you can get 2 or 3 doctors as well as 3 nurses or so, what the total is, who come across with such humility, such compassion, such, because they could be angry with the anti-vaxxers, they could be like name calling angry on that level, but instead they feel for the people who were drawn in by the anti-vaxxers. And so I was surprised, delightfully surprised, how consistent that emotional state of the emotional response to this tragedy had become among all of the target interviewers. So that's a testament to Scott's, he picked him. He knew. Scott, didn't you find someone after an article in the New Yorker magazine?
It was Blima.
Yeah. So a good documentarian is finding people who can give the right messages in the right way so that you can influence the audience emotionally, intellectually, and even emotionally. So that surprised me, because I've met doctors who were basically assholes. I've met nurses who are ready to give up, or you're just another patient in my day of 35 patients, and I don't have sensitivity to you. So in this case, I would want all of them to be my nurses and my doctors.
And you're pointing out something that it came to me, and it plays visually in the film, that just naturally, through the people that are telling the truth and are also humble, you believe with them. You look in their eyes and you want to be engaged by them. You see that they're not trying to be perfect. They're trying to express the best thing. And then
they're not trying to sell you anything. They're not. Right.
You look at Del Biggs, you look at their eyes, because we did direct address interviews like this. You look at Robert Kennedy Jr.'s eyes, Del Bigtree's eyes, Andrew Wakefield's eyes, and you can see the smarm and them dancing around the fact of how hard it is to try and tell to continue with their, dare I say, lies, their fomenting of disinformation. It's much harder. It's easier to tell the truth.
Last question for the both of you. I think this film is such a celebration of the medical experts that you featured throughout this film. But also one of the goals was to replace cynicism with healthy curiosity. As you've brought this film around the festival circuit, what has it meant to both of you as filmmakers to see that you've created that impact firsthand?
It has been wonderful to see people experience this film in a hopeful way, because there's a lot of cynicism in it. There's a lot of disinformation in it. There's a lot of downright lies in the film. But at the end of the day, science makes our lives better. And the people that follow science and have the humility to use the scientific method, which is checking themselves and checking these institutions in the same way that hopefully we as journalists and storytellers use systems to check ourselves, that they can not come out of this film cynical, because we're living at a time where some people get confused and wonder if cynical and skeptical are the same thing, and they're not. Skeptical is beautiful. It's a foundation of science. Obviously, it's a foundation of our instincts as human beings to be skeptical and wonder, should I eat that plant? Should I have trust in that friendship? Should I listen to that person? And cynical is a bit of a poison, a little bit more than a bit of a poison. It is a poison. And cynical comes about when you are presented with information that could lower your skepticism, like the COVID. You're skeptical if the COVID vaccine is going to be safe, or is it worth the risk? And you're presented with overwhelming evidence that it is far safer to take it than to not take it, not just for yourself, but other people that you could pass COVID on to. But you don't want to believe that. You're not skeptical anymore. You're cynical. And I've come to say that a lot of these people fomenting disinformation aren't just corrupt. They're corrosive, and they're corrosive to these systems. And I've been very grateful that the film goes the opposite direction on that and reinstates the reasons you should have trust in verifiable truth, in decency, in our social contract. So it's been a great honor to see that effect.
I'm new to film festivals, but I was delighted to watch the reaction in the crowd, in the audience, to scenes where I had the same reaction, right? So it wasn't just because I was close to the project and felt it more because of that fact. It was that the film was actually being effective in all the ways intended, at the right time and in the right way.